Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Pamela Benke, Director of Product Marketing at Knowledge Lake, and welcome to the first session of our transformative webinar series featuring Dr. Leslie Willcocks and Dr. John Hindle, the esteemed authors of Maximizing Value with Automation and Digital Transformation, a Realist Guide. Today marks the beginning of a journey that promises to reshape your understanding and approach to automation and digital transformation in an ever evolving business landscape. But before we begin, a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and available for later viewing on demand. We encourage your participation, so please feel free to ask questions in the chat window and we'll address them during the Q&A session. And now, to start us off is Knowledge Lake's Russ Malls, VP of Sales and co-author of Evolutionary AI. Russ, take it away.
Thank you very much, Pam. Can you see the slides now, Pam?
Yes, we can see them.
All right. Before we turn things over to our esteemed guest, a few words and background in terms of what we're seeing in market now. We're entering a really exciting time in the market where work has always been done by humans, but now we're seeing this new approach to doing work through automation. And we believe it's evolving and changing very rapidly. And we've heard of this new concept as synthetic labor. Leveraging synthetic labor for the right workloads is helping many of our customers boost operational efficiency, agility, and time to market. And we're seeing examples across all industries where customers are taking very innovative approach, automating more work, incorporating into their business processes, and delivering productivity and value back to the business. So in summary, our view is that synthetic labor enables organizations to improve productivity as a primary objective. When we think about why this happens, one key focus area is the rapid acceleration of technology. So we see technology as accelerating exponentially. And what this means is there's more and more opportunity for automation. More work will shift as this change continues. More work will shift from the domain of humans to the domain of synthetic labor. Enabling synthetic labor is the only way companies can thrive with exponential AI-fueled innovation. We see more and more opportunity, not only to leverage the technologies, but change processes using synthetic labor to achieve business results. And we're seeing good evidence that early adapters are realizing significant competitive advantage when they incorporate synthetic labor into their operations. When we think about work, we try to define work as work product output. And this has traditionally been the domain of people, or people, process, and technology. As we look forward, we've incorporated the concept of synthetic labor as another element, an important element to help companies do work. In other words, to improve work product output. And what we're seeing is when you incorporate synthetic labor, when you incorporate processes that can be automated, we're seeing improved quality, consistency, reliability, time return to the business, and mission outcome. And when we talk about synthetic labor in this context, it's beyond a traditional automation. What we're talking about are new technologies that include elements of workflow, that include elements of RPA, and that are fueled by or incorporate elements of AI to achieve an automation that can be done quickly and that's very agile. What we're finding is that from a customer perspective, incorporating synthetic labor into their ability to do work is reducing cost, decreasing uncertainty, and oftentimes helping companies in their hiring process, scaling faster scaling faster or responding to changing business dynamics is much easier done when you have some level of automation, particularly when we've automated some of the back office functions or some functions that include go-to-market functions but are repetitive tasks. A key issue that we talk to many of our clients about on a daily basis is finding the right balance. Certain tasks are best done for humans, and we expect this will continue. As a matter of fact, the future we envision includes companies using automations with human in the loop and human oversight, controlled by teams of innovators, but using this the synthetic labor force to do work more effectively. And the most successful companies we see are enabling and encouraging the use of synthetic labor at the departmental level. This is important because many companies tried top-down approaches and with mixed results. So we're finding that when automation happens close to the business with support from IT, there are often good results and results where we can apply an agile approach. We can see improvement that starts small and then continues to grow over time. And as the rate of technology change continues to accelerate, the ability to quickly leverage synthetic labor becomes more and more important. We believe this will be a key competitive advantage for the market and for forward-looking companies going forward. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to our esteemed guests, Dr. John Hindle and Dr. Leslie Willcocks from Knowledge Capital Partners.
Thank you very much, Russell. Welcome to the first in a three-part series that looks at automation and AI, where we are, where the value is, and how to get it in the larger context of digital transformation. I am Leslie Willcocks, and with my co-host, John Hindle. Today, we're going to look at the agenda change most organizations need to make to become more digital and release the enormous value most are actually missing. We are part of a small operation called Knowledge Capital Partners. I tend to be the research director doing the research services, partly because I've been a chair at London School of Economics and Political Science and got a big academic research background. John Hindle tends to be in charge of thought leadership over the several decades for us. And we have two other partners who are in charge of a more recent operation, which is helping people with change management and communications. When we talk about automation, AI, and digital transformation, we do so from an evidence base. And the evidence base is, I think, quite impressive. Then I was involved in building it. But it goes back to about 2015. And from that date, we looked at a lot of detailed case studies of initially robotic process automation, and then what I call cognitive automation, which is where you're moving into the use of machine learning and algorithms and more sophisticated software. We've looked a bit at enterprise blockchains, but not really got too excited by that because it hasn't really taken off in organizational terms as opposed to cryptocurrency. But more recently, we've really majored on digital transformation cases, and we're increasingly looking at how automation and AI fit within digital transformation and all those other technologies it's got to work with. So we've written 5 books, which are basically very evidence-based, lots of case studies in them, and lots of lessons, lots of work based on our advisory work that hopefully you will find as practitioners very useful indeed. So we have this wonderful evidence base, which we're adding to on a weekly basis. We update and we do a survey every year at least to get the bigger themes and things that we might be missing. And I'm going to talk about initially the real power of automation. I sometimes, some time ago, I think it was 2016, coined this phrase about robotic process automation, that it takes the robot out of the human. When you think about it, it's doing all those things that humans hate doing. What I call the Bjorn Borg factor. Bjorn Borg was like an automaton, a robot on the tennis court, and that's what made him great at tennis. But not everyone's going to be great at tennis, because it's not it's almost a superhuman quality, that level of consistency and ability to repeat the task time and again mindlessly. So and even he could only stomach it till he was 26 and had to retire. So this stuff is pretty dumb software, but it's massively useful to organizations, and it's the engine room of everything else. And therefore, it will figure very highly on people's adoption curves. Moving over to the right-hand side, I've sort of tried to make this memorable by saying, well, beyond RPA, you've got cognitive automation, and then the attempt to amalgamate RPA with cognitive automation, lots of different kinds of automation, to produce a sort of seamless, intelligent automation, which is, I think, where Knowledge Lake is at the moment, although I suspect many organizations are not taking full advantage of all that intelligent automation that they have available. More about that later, perhaps. But intelligent automation and what we call artificial intelligence, which is another step up from the sort of software that has been available up to now, aimed to put the human into the robot. And I say aim to because it's a very difficult, challenging thing to do, as we will discover as we go through these three events. But that's the aspiration anyway. So am I messing up the sequence here?
Is the slide moving? Do you need me to move it? Oh,
no,
there you go.
That's okay. I've recovered myself. So as I said, the robotic process automation, relatively simple to do, but very difficult to scale and reach enterprise level with, partly because in the past vendors have not always created an RPA that was scalable and very enterprise safe. Some did, some didn't. But what we're finding amongst the top 20% of organizations that have been utilizing automation well is a lot of value. In fact, triple wins seem to have emerged from these leading organizations. Not just shareholder value, the typical sort of stuff is down the left-hand side, but surprisingly, because they always conceived of it in the 2010s to 2020 as a sort of back office software, but it actually creates customer value. It removes pain points for customers. It speeds up service to customers. It enhances their journeys. You get insurance policy within not within 2 weeks, but within 3 days. Just to give you one example, multiple examples of how customer value was improved as a result of simple RPA. And the other thing that we found is that there is an employee value here. I'll talk about this later if we go into surprising findings from our research. But there is a real value in terms of employees really appreciating and not deprecating the introduction of automation into their workplace. And there are reasons for that, which I can go into later. But it's surprising because everyone really gets misled by the big debate on will automation and AI replace human beings in the workplace. The actual answer is, well, it will change a lot of the way that a lot of work is done. But on the last analysis we did of the net loss of jobs from automation by 2030, the figure is 1% net loss. Because there are lots of gains as well as losses from the automation of the workplace. And it is actually quite a minimum effect on aggregate. Of course, there are radical skill shifts and there will be disruptions in the transition, but that's an interesting finding. And it explains a little more why there is employee value from this automation. So what I thought we would do initially, John and I, was to take us through a progress report, which we prepare every 4 months. It's a Knowledge Capital Partners London School of Economics progress report, because we utilize some of the researchers that are my colleagues at London School of Economics as well. But panning across all the studies that we've done, including our own database, what we're finding is that the potential is vast and largely unexploited. If you look down a bit lower in a minute, in point 3, you'll see that actually the market size for RPA, intelligent automation, and IA is surprisingly small when you think of the trillions that is spent on digital technologies, on information communication technologies generally. $130 billion revenues is not a big figure, and 37% compound annual growth rate to 2030 is not that rapid when you consider the level of hype that we've experienced about automation NI and how it's going to take over the world very quickly, and is represents an existential threat to humankind. So lots of potential value, largely unexploited. And one of the surprising things that as researchers we discovered that people are relatively slow into these automations, in the sense that the technology and its capability has been there for a while. RPA goes back to 2003, actually. But you can see that the adoption rate is not huge. So you get between 10 and 100 RPA robots, or software licenses is a better way of phrasing it, really, is typical for most clients. And very few, 35%, have scaled to 81 to 150 of these robots. So the reason for that is, on the initial march into automation, it's relatively easy to utilize, configure, and drive benefits out of. And we get people saying that, they're getting a return on investment of between 30% and 200% in the first 18 months from their RPA. But thereafter, there seem to be a number of problems. We'll come to that in a minute. But it's real challenges in scaling, getting to a bigger size. People are actually not making the strategic investment to get to another level, and people limiting their benefits aspiration too much, so that they aspire to too little, so they invest too little, so they don't scale. So the other feature here, and we'll emphasize this throughout the 3 sessions, is that too much of the approach into automation is very piecemeal. It by no means could you call it strategic. We'll talk about what strategic looks like in just a later slide. The other problem is that people have been experiencing very high AI washing. The hype is incredible. I like to say that it's not just the pigs that are flying, it's the whole farm when you get into AI washing. And the result is that there are very unrealistic expectations about what can actually be achieved. Hopefully, people like Knowledge Lake keep your feet on the ground as to what they can achieve with their technology. We uncovered a lot of what we call under the radar client challenges. And if we have time, we can point to those later on. But one of them, for example, is that no one ever talks about this, but many organizations have experienced digital fatigue. They have run out of the ability to do change. They're dragged back on all those maintenance problems with their existing technologies, trying to stick digital technology overlay into their existing IT platforms. And then along comes generative AI, and they have to start worrying about that and getting chief executives to say, what are we doing about generative AI? And you then discover that, we just haven't got the ability. We've run out of energy. There is such a thing as organizational energy, And if you're lacking that, it doesn't matter what your aspirations are, you can't move forward. That's just one of the many under the radar challenges we found. The other thing that we found is that not every organization responds in the same way to achieving digital value. We actually think that by sector, there are sort of 4 groups of organizations in every sector. 20% are leaders doing the sort of things that you read about in the Harvard Business Review and Sloan Management Review and in our book. 25% are trying to get there, but are for various reasons not got the capabilities yet, or not the aspirations, or must be some reason why they can't replicate what the leaders are doing. 35% are laggards. They're getting value, but not enough, not anything like it's like 10% value as opposed to 22% value that the leaders are getting. And 20% are just struggling. They're not actually, they really need a lot of help. They can catch up, but they're not in a position to even start very often. So they run into real problems. So I'm going to move to the next slide, and John, who's our value guru, and is going to talk through the pathway to digital value and the sort of different, the way that organizations mature and evolve through different phases.
Thanks, Leslie. And I'd like to take a look at what this pathway to digital value looks like on this slide that Leslie's just put up. Leslie and I have been researching how companies have used IT to create value for over 30 years. It's hard to believe it's been that long. Since the early days of IT outsourcing and business process outsourcing, right through the birth of the internet and all the successive ways of change that's enabled, shared services, cloud, analytics, RPA, cognitive tools, intelligent automation, artificial intelligence, the list goes on, and it just comes after us in wave after wave. And what we found is that organizations usually justify their initial investment decision using familiar return on investment and total cost of ownership models that are really focused on achieving cost savings and efficiency, doing things faster, better, and cheaper, in other words. And while that's important, shown on this slide as phases 1 and 2, it's also where roughly half of companies stop, failing to realize the additional value that's available by thinking more strategically about the benefits that these technologies can generate. More ambitious organizations, however, in our research, about 25% of adoptees move beyond this efficiency stage by scaling and integrating their technology investments for greater business effectiveness. So moving from efficiency to effectiveness, capturing what we call the triple win that Leslie described earlier by creating options for the business on this platform. And the true leaders in value capture, the top 20% that Leslie referred to, use their new and improved technology platform for what we call enablement, to transform their business by creating new services and enhanced customer journeys, along with greater employee satisfaction, growing both revenue and profit, and capturing what we call total platform value. And it's interesting that as technologies have been fused now from individual discrete technologies into platforms, and Knowledge Lake is evidence of that, that there's more opportunity for customers to move to this enablement stage. And we'll be focusing more on this concept of total platform value in the next webinar. But Leslie, perhaps you can add some color here by sharing some of the challenges and impediments that we see clients facing on their journeys.
Okay, yeah. Make sure I press the right button. No, I've pressed the wrong one. There we go. How do I get back to the full
Which slide did you?
This whole
We,
slide.
we can see the slide numbers. It has 7 through 10.
Yeah, can you see all that? I can't.
Yes.
It's probably my screen.
We can see it.
I can't see 7 and 8. Oh, God. Sorry, I'm having a problem getting to the full slide.
We see it. It's on the screen now.
Yeah, I can't, so I'm not sure what I'm talking about.
Okay, you are on slide 13.
Yeah.
Numbers 7 through 10 about the organizations that got caught in phase 2.
Yeah, I've got that. I can see 9 and 10, but the whole slide is not actually good, isn't it? Sorry about that. I think I pressed the wrong button here. Never mind. Well, anyway, I can read 9 and 10. 9 and 10 says the major challenge. I think number 7 is something about major challenges. Organizations find it very difficult to scale, I'm guessing.
Yes, number 9, major challenges, 75%.
Yeah, well, what's interesting there, the major challenges, a lot of organizations don't realize that the major challenges are actually not technological. They get so over-focused on the technology, which the vendors should actually be dealing with, and under-focused on the organizational managerial factors that are actually the key ones that they need to spend time on. And it's very interesting that we identified, John and I, 7 core capabilities you need to build for digital transformation. And about 6 of those are managerial and organizational, and only 1 is build the digital platform. So this gives you some idea of where you should be focusing your attention on. It's not just the technology, it's actually the next bit, which is how siloed your organization is. We talk about the 8 siloed organization, and it's very difficult to introduce digital transformation and automation in a very siloed organization. The silos we're talking about are strategy, structure, embedded culture, managerial mindsets, processes, data, technology, planning processes. If you're siloed organizationally along those lines, it's very difficult to change the way that you operate and bring in digital technologies. They don't like that kind of silos. The other thing, what we've discovered is point 10, which is that there is massive value being left on the table. This is from our own research base, because a lot of research projects don't actually look at value. It's quite difficult to tease out, so we can do it at case study level. But we found examples where efficiency, a lot of organizations the last year have been focusing on cost efficiency, especially, they can get up to 200% more value as a result of applying their automation technologies. If you're going beyond doing things better, but doing better things, which is what the definition of effectiveness is, we're seeing that there's exponentially even more value, up to 500% more value from applying the technologies. And if you're doing enablement, which is creating what we call a digital platform, which gives you future options on how you do things, what processes you're going to redesign, how you're going to redesign them, create new lines of business, create new business models. We're seeing organizations get this exponential increase in value, 10 times the value that they were getting before. And the more the technology you add that works in a seamless way, then the more exponential value you actually get. That's what's happening in the leaders. And the leaders are actually we have to say, are pulling ahead, further ahead, as a result of their application of these technologies and their ability to manage these technologies. They're accelerating their learning on it. It's not irreversible in the sense that organizations can catch up, but they've got to start sooner rather than later if they're actually going to try to do that. Right, so I'm going to move to the next slide, which I think is basically how where you should be moving to. And the answer on the next slide, slide 14, is you've got to move to the left-hand side. You've got to make a key decision at senior executive level to get on the left-hand side of this diagram on 7 areas. And it's very easy to say you've got to become strategic, but that means you've got to start not with return on investment and tactical use of automation as it comes on stream. You've got to think what the end point is in 3 to 5 years and how the automation fits with the digital technologies you are also going to employ and that are also going to come on stream in that period. So becoming strategic is quite a senior level decision, and it orientates the organization towards a program governance, because governance is key to this, and a holistic approach to automation, putting it in a much wider context. And it also orientates the organization towards prioritizing strategic investments into these technologies. Without that significant move, you're not going to really shift the dial very much on automation, generative AI, and you're going to create blind spots in the organization where people are moving forward, and it seems to be progress, but they're not doing it together. And the secret to all this is to doing it in a synthesized, seamless way. I think part of that is then unrolling the planning case of that for 3 to 5 years. The third item is building a culture that is a digital culture, digital first culture. The fourth item is seeing it as not one-off projects, because you start with pilot projects and then you run multiple pilot projects, and somehow you think somehow it's going to all add up to something much more at the end. It doesn't. You can need a program governance, which is going to holistically look at the timing of investments, which technology to get into when, and also makes you able to build a digital platform over time, rather than see this as a series of tools that you employ to some sort of benefit that looks after a local business imperative within the organization. The other big thing that I think John and I found when we looked at a series of digital transformations is that self-confessedly, even the good organizations are weakest at change management, bringing the technology into the organization. And they too often allow too many silos of the sort that I described earlier to hang around. And actually this blocks the ability to utilize these technologies and release the value. The other major area which organizations are not good at, and which we're going to talk about next time, is they're not good at measuring either costs, total costs, or measuring potential value, where the real value can be. Notoriously over the years, the real value of IT has been missed by so many organizations because they've always been regarded by traditional accountants, and I'm a qualified accountant myself, so I know what I'm talking about. They've always been regarded as, too soft to merit inclusion into the cost-benefit analysis and the business case. That's the trouble with a lot of these technologies. The benefits are too soft and too remote from the actual implementation of the technology to be countered. But they are hugely valuable. And the ultimate thing is, if they save you from going under, as a result, you get into digital, it saves you from going under. That is a very big win. But you probably wouldn't make the decision to invest if you use the traditional cost benefit business case. So we move to the last slide, where basically I'm saying this is where it comes together. You want the RPA to fit seamlessly with the cognitive automation to establish intelligent automation, which is, I think, what both John and I think that Knowledge Lake do very well. I think they realized where it was going technologically, and by 2019 had sorted out to making very seamless the bringing together a number of technologies that were hugely useful to the organization, and giving a lot of options to organizations who wanted to take all this further. And I think quite a lot of the modern technologies, and I think Knowledge Lake is very good at this too, deal with the items on the left-hand side, which is RPA could only deal with structured data. Most data in organizations, about 80% in the average organization, is not structured, it's unstructured. And you get these different kinds of data: dirty data, hidden data, missing data, and you really need to have some way of capturing the relevant data. And in most organizations, the relevant data is about 20% of the data that's flowing through your organization. That's based on looking at banking and insurance companies that we've dealt with, which are basically data factories when you think about it, data processing factories. And the idea then is to solve the data problem, bring together the different technologies, integrate process and service automation, and then there's a further integration that has to happen, which is with all these other technologies that are not AI and automation technologies, but which you are very aware of and which are also potentially massively valuable to your organization. And again, it's bringing them together that gives you the exponential value. So if I run out, next time. So I think I've run out of time, but we're here for questions, of course, and there's quite a lot that could be asked, I suspect. But next time, John's going to major on this one, I hope. But we're going to look at where the value is and how to accelerate value and how to reduce costs when you're digitalizing, bringing automation to bear on your organization. So I think I'm sorry, I apologize that I lost being able to look at all the slides, but hopefully that gives you a very good idea of what we found so far. Over to
Thank you. That was wonderful. Really appreciate all the great information that you have both shared with us today. And for those in the audience who want to get started with Knowledge Lake and realize some of these total cost of ownership, total value with Knowledge Lake, please join us for 5 spots at a no charge proof of concept. If you're interested, email me, pamela.banky@knowledgelake.com, or in the attachment section, there is a form that you can quickly fill out. And also, the first 5 that do fill out that form will get an autographed book from our authors that have joined us today. And it's a great value as well. And I think with that, we will open it up to questions. So I will go ahead and end the slides and take a look here at our questions. Please go to the questions section underneath the video, type in any questions you may have. I see some questions coming in now, and we will address those. Here's one. In your experience, what are the most common pitfalls organizations encounter when embarking on a digital transformation journey, and how can we effectively avoid falling into the transformation bog?
Do you want to go, John, or do you want me to go, or does Russell want to go?
I'll offer a view that it's by thinking too small. Is thinking locally rather than thinking across the organization. And we find this again and again, that a lot of these projects are taken up locally, and there's a great lack of coordination and sharing of information and knowledge. And so I think, as Leslie alluded to in his last comment, you really have to step back and look at the whole of what's going on and put together a program and a plan to integrate the relevant pieces of it, and to make sure that you don't get rogue technologies locally that are interfering with the larger goal.
Pam, I'd like to add to that too. John, in support of what you're saying, what we see in the field consistently is that initiatives that have support from the top, strong executive sponsorship, have a much greater chance to succeed and deliver business value.
Well, I can codify it, because we get asked this question a great deal about digital transformation, not just automation. And certainly our earlier books tell you everything you need to know about how to automate. But on digital transformation, there are sort of 6 in priority order that we come across. The first one is lack of digital leadership, lack of digital vision, lack of investment prioritization for doing this on a big enough scale. The second one is unrealistic expectations. There's this idea of a plug and play, fire and forget missile. If you add the technology, just add water and it will all happen. It doesn't work like that, and it never has done. Right back into when I first encountered IT in 1979, when we were asked to help organizations introduce IT, and we had no idea. I was in a consultancy at the time. It was very embryonic. People didn't have unrealistic expectations at all. They didn't expect anything from the technology, but they certainly had this idea that all you had to do was add water to the technology, and the technology would do the job. And it's dreadfully misleading to go down that route. And a hell of a lot of management and organization change needs to be done before you get value from the technology. The technology is worth nothing. It's not even worth what you paid for it until you start putting it into an organizational setting, context, and manage the hell out of it. The third thing is not building a digital platform, but seeing it as a series of porta cabin investments. You're not building a town or a city, you're building a set of porta cabins, and that doesn't add up to an integrated, seamless platform. The fourth point is management's have not made the organization ready. The organizational readiness is not there. It's being added to an organization that's not ready. So there's no real planning set up. There's no real governance of the digital. There's no culture in place. There's no program management, and the change management comes belatedly when you start running into problems. Hey, you just realize that it's not about bringing just the technology in. It's also about getting the organization to buy into this. That's the biggest problem, by the way, the buy-in from the organization. So this change management capability is very important. And the last one I would say is the real drag is the historic legacy. Those silos, the technology is a drag, and how it exhausts you in terms of just maintaining that legacy, stopping you from doing new things.
Great. Before we get to the next question, I see some folks submitting for the free proof of concept, so that's awesome. We do have another question that just came in. What strategies can smaller organizations with limited resources employ to begin their automation journey, and how can they scale these initiatives as they grow?
I've got an answer for that, but I think I'm sure Russell has as well, and John as well. Yeah, and Pamela. Do you want to go, Russell, or do you want?
No, go right ahead, please.
Well, the thing that we've learned about this, and it's very true for small businesses, is that you have to identify what your business imperative is, where the pain point in the organization is. And unless you've got a problem, the technology is no use to a small business. So whatever the problem is, it might not be what the management consultants say it is. It might be that you as a small business has a specific problem. It might be we can't employ people to do this job, for example, and therefore we can't do that very well. Or it might be we can't get to our customers quick enough, or we can't attract enough customers. So establish the business imperative that is key to your survival and growth. It might be 1, 2, or 3. It might be about improving the customer experience. It might be operational efficiency. It might be stock holding, any of these sorts of things. But until you've identified that, this stuff is no use to you whatsoever. And I wouldn't recommend spending any money on it or time on it. But when you've identified the pain point and the business imperative, you then can start erecting all the stuff you need to in order to prioritize the investments in this, the sort of stuff that I mentioned earlier.
I think also, Leslie, it's are you buying a product or a solution? If you don't know what the problem is you're trying to solve, any product will have about the same impact. So, and I think one of the things and one of the demonstrations of progress in this industry is the fusion of products into a platform, which is exactly what Knowledge Lake has done. Instead of buying discrete products for local needs, you've got a platform that integrates the core technologies that an organization needs in order to function effectively. And so the philosophy of let 1,000 flowers bloom doesn't really work very well in IT.
Can I add to that? Because what Knowledge Lake has been successful at seamlessly integrating a number of these technologies. This is one of the things that we've found under the bonnet, as it were, which other researchers will not tell you because they probably don't know it. But when you look at detailed case studies, vendors are very variable in their ability to integrate seamlessly different technologies. If you go back to about 2018, a lot of suppliers of RPA were saying now we have all these partners who are going to add all these cognitive automation tools and various technologies that are sophisticated, and RPA is going to be the engine room for that. Off you go, and you say, well, who's going to do the integration? And the RPA vendors said, well, we're not doing it. It's our partners. Yes, they're really good at that. And the partners will say, we're really good at this. And you run into hidden costs, hidden delays, and you get disappointed, and people start saying, well, maybe we're not going to go down this route. Therefore, we're not scaling and we're not getting into intelligent automation. So there's a lot of problems there, a lot of challenges there on that front.
Yeah, I have to just jump in here and support both. Some pragmatic, examples that we're seeing. Number one, it's important to understand in totality what's going to need to happen when you look to automate. And what I mean by that is some software will require a lot of configuration, buying of hardware, things of this nature. If you can go SaaS, I'd say go SaaS. If you can use a model where the software is going to be updated easily, that's usually a good thing. Number two, if you can use your own data and do some sort of proof of concept or do something beforehand, always good, right? You'll get to see what actually works. And number three, high level in AI, it's always important to consider process. Many times AI can solve 80, 90, 95% of a problem. some of the outlying things, some of the outlying exceptions won't be handled by an automation. That's okay. 95% could be really good, but you have to have a process in place where exceptions are queued to the right humans or the right group, right, so that they can be handled. So those would be three things that we see pretty much on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, John, I'm not sure what you think about this. We've looked at all the data, but I'm not convinced that all the suppliers out there have fully integrated seamlessly the technologies that they say they have. Very often what they've done is they bought another organization and said, now we have RPA, now we have algorithmic capability here, and you can buy it all now, just a one-stop shop. But have they actually made it easy to do?
They've bundled rather than integrated.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, you need to check
you
that out.
You can buy the bundle, but it's not integrated.
Yeah, which means there's a lot of stuff to do back at the ranch, doesn't there?
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I see another question just came in. Would Knowledge Lake accommodate low-code, no-code platform where an organization would be requiring to do consolidation for accounting where several accounts are handled by other subsidiaries, but management accounts would want consolidated books? And then there's a second part to that. Most organizations have lots of dirty data, but they want an efficient solution, which means their data must first be clean and prepared for consumption by solutions.
Yeah. So part one, I would say, is worth another discussion, right? It sounds like potentially yes, but want to have more questions. Part two, and happy to do that with myself and my team. Part two, a lot of dirty data. Yeah, that's right. So it is really important that you address data issues, and I'll let both Leslie and John discuss that more. What we see as another related common problem is data that's in unstructured format, right? We often deal with unstructured format, and that's a place where we tend to do well. An example would be transcript processing for universities. Some universities have 10, 20, 30 people processing transcripts, trying to figure out an average transcript grade. These aren't necessarily dirty data per se, but you have watermarks, you have things that are difficult to read, and no two transcripts are the same. So you need something beyond just OCR, something beyond a machine learning based algorithm to look at data. We incorporate several other uses of AI, including generative, to get to high scores, and are working with some customers seeing good results. So on the dirty data, I think it's a great point. For unstructured data, I think it's important also to think about, can that be used for automation?
Yeah. Well, I've got this saying, and it comes from doing research into this area, which is that the dirty secret of big data is that all data is virtually dirty. And that's the problem, as they're experiencing already with generative AI. If you didn't really care too much where you got the data from, it's what goes into a hamburger, isn't it? Some hamburgers taste a lot better than others. Being a vegetarian myself, I wouldn't know, but certainly that's what they tell me. That there's a qualitative difference between some hamburgers.
We are fortunate to live in an environment and an era of abundant technology. We wish we had the management strength to be able to deal with that.
That's very good. You write that one down, John. Yeah, that's very good.
Wonderful. Any other questions? I think we're good. Benson, thank you for the comment. Benson is the person who just asked that question previously with FICA Systems Limited and has some great experience with Knowledge Lake with document scanners for Save the Children. So thank you, Benson. Any last parting thoughts, everyone, as we close out this webinar?
Well, my closing thought is that what shocks me, it was brought to me once when I received a prize, and the person who was giving me the prize was Buzz Aldrin. who might remember the second man on the moon. And Buzz Aldrin, we were having dinner the night before, and he saw I had a Dell Latitude, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "It's a computer." He said, "Oh, what's the spec?" And I knew it because you used to buy them online in those days. And I told him, and he said, "You know, you've got more computing power there than we had to get to the moon and back." And I said, "Yeah, it's good, isn't it?" He said, "What do you do with it?" He said. And this is the thing, we've got this fabulous technology. Actually, what we've got already is fabulous. We don't need any more. We need to integrate it and make it more seamless. But the stuff, if we stop now and exploited what we have managerially and organizationally, you'd be fine. John and I did a series on thought leadership some years ago, and we called it Just Add Imagination. If you add imagination, business imagination, and then apply technical prowess and change management for the organization side, you're home and dry with this stuff. You don't need to invest any more in generative AI or the next generation, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it all does superior stuff. But if you hit the right thing for the business, you really don't need to do much more.
Wonderful. We are coming here to the end. John, any last words?
No, I'm glad you brought that up. That was a great series and a great research project that we did. But the proof was technology is abundant, but we have not yet developed the management strength to be able to assemble it in ways that produce value for all. So it's the management challenge, not a technology challenge.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining today. And as we said, this is the first of a series. Look out for the next one to come with an invite shortly. Russ, thank you. John, Leslie, thank you all for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.